Welcome back to Alumni Game, the show where three Gamecocks dive into South Carolina sports, football, hoops, the NCAA, everything that comes along with it.
Where our opinions are never filtered, sometimes reasonable, and always fun.
That's right. You can check out all of those takes that we have on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on all those platforms. Settle in, y'all, and let's get started with this week's episode of Alumni
Game!
Game!
Hey there, football fans. Welcome back to another episode of Alumni Game. Me and my cohort Sam, both class of '06, South Carolina, coming at you. Coming back to recap the draft that was last week. Some great stories, some slides, some cool picks. We were a bit off on a few things, so we'll try and correct those glitches. But we're excited to talk about it. I was actually in attendance at MetLife for their live draft party, which was a lot of fun. It wasn't my wife has season tickets to the Giants, so we go to those games and we try to attend some events as season ticket holders. And this is a fun event. You can go down, you can go on the field. They have a lot of people signing. This was pretty cool because they kind of introed Russell Wilson and he threw a few moon balls, so that was pretty cool. And then
The
obviously with
ball.
yeah, right. And then with the Giants having an early first round pick, and then my Patriots having an early first round pick, being able to see those picks in a stadium was pretty cool. So I'll talk about
What's
that a little bit more later.
Yeah, well, I
Some
have some questions about that, but if you want to talk about it later, we can. We'll just tease it for now. We'll just tease
yeah,
it for
Q and
now.
A is for later. Okay. Um, but some good stuff for South Carolina here. Making history a little bit. This 2025 NFL draft marks the first time in South Carolina history that 5 players have been drafted in the first 4 rounds. So check that off. And huge pin on the chest for coach because obviously, his defense was pretty good and these players were all going to the NFL because of what they were able to achieve and their abilities. And then also a program record for just the number of defensive players taken in a draft with 5. And we'll go through those players here in a minute. But Sam,
Good sign.
some
Good sign.
some just just I'll kick it over to you, and I think we know these, but just some of your bigger headlines from the draft from that first round that you kind of thought were big splash headlines. I know I got a couple.
Last week we were talking about this on the show. It was you and me and Buster. Hope everything's good. We want you to come back on as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
we'll have him back real soon.
Our boots on the ground reporter there. We talked a little bit about Shador and like where he was going to land and like what's going to happen. Um, I'm a little surprised he dropped as far as he did. I'm not surprised that he dropped out of the first round. I think there was just nothing that matched up the team need with like what we were
Yeah.
seeing ahead of time. Another key takeaway I have is that it was pretty cool to see someone. The only one thing that we might have gotten correct was around defensive line for the Buffalo Bills. They trade up to grab a guy I really liked. I love him. Great Gamecock, TJ Sanders. Um, that's the South Carolina storyline. I guess the Shador one is kind of the prevalent storyline from there. But
Yeah.
you get the sense a little bit that football, we talked about this last year with the Eagles winning, certainly with Ohio State winning and college football. It's cyclical and it seems to be like kind of a reverse back towards like the meat and potatoes of football, right? The running backs, the trenches.
Yeah.
Get back to stopping the run. Get back to like protecting the guys that you have to protect, which is the quarterback. And the quarterback could be splashy, could not be splashy, but we want to make sure that in the trenches we're set. And most NFL teams kind of did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, on some individual players, yes, we were pretty far off, and that can be hard to tell. But I
We
think
were.
starting at the top, we generally had it correct, and most of the pundits did, where people were going to go. We knew Cam Ward was number one. He was number one. The Titans did field calls. I was surprised to hear that the Giants were calling about that and trying to do that. I was surprised for that.
That's
We talked
surprising.
about
You're right.
They have Russell, they have Jameis, but they did their homework and they knew what was up with quarterbacks. And just to reference that exactly, I mean, that is the biggest headline. I don't love that. There's 257 guys getting drafted. They all have a future. This is one guy in Sanders, but I get it. People want to hate. They like sometimes to see an epic fail. And yes, this was a bit of an epic fail on the Sanders camp to the tune of something like $4.4 million. Now they're saying that he made money off his legendary brand, his clothing brand, because every time they showed him, it was worth this, that, and the other. Okay, whatever. I'm not, I got that, and you can parse it all down to money, that's fine. But when I hear stories about the Giants saying he didn't do their homework, he took calls during the meeting. He didn't even want to answer questions. Look, that's going to drop you, especially with a team like the Giants, who just drafted Daniel Jones and gave him a contract, and that was a huge mistake. So, of course, that's going to happen. For him to drop as far as he did, didn't really see that. But I do hope, I got to think that it's going to maybe humble him a little bit, and now he'll play with a chip on his shoulder, and who knows, he could take the whole league by storm. I don't exactly get what the Browns are doing with all these quarterbacks now.
Oh yeah, I'm okay with it because it's the
I
Browns.
get it because they've never succeeded, but I just feel like, man, you're using all these picks when you could be getting other stuff. You know, you get the kid, you get Dylan Gabriel, you get Shador, you got Deshaun Hurt, you got Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's not happy now. Like, I let that all sorted out. I'm not here to analyze the Browns and what they're doing. But for me, you know, where did we get it right? We talked up Jackson Dart a good bit.
We did. We did.
You know?
Real quick from what you just said, it's like with Shador falling, right? Like, to me at least, one final comment there. We'll get to Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
It's just like the billionaires are in charge, even in the NFL, man. So like you can't just assume that you're gonna come in and get a paycheck and like everything's gonna be good. The billionaires are still in charge, so you're not gonna be able to like big body them. That's like my kind of interpretation there.
Yeah, and the way these contracts go, you're investing in a person, right? And if you can't trust that person doesn't give you a time of day, and their ego's that big, it doesn't really matter what you bring exactly. I'm not down with that, you know. And I hate to pick on the Giants specifically, but like with the Giants, they got to get it right. They got to get it right now, and they got to win games. And I think they are set up. I mean, the Giants actually had a very good draft. You know, I kind of was reading, you know, a lot of pundits. Giants, Seahawks, Pats, Browns is what I heard. Now, I don't really buy the Browns. I think the Pats had a good draft, but not a great draft. And I think Seahawks did okay. But when I see what the Giants did, I mean, they did what they were supposed to do with Abdul Carter. And let me tell you, when that stadium was excited for that. Right?
Abdul Carter's a beast, man. Absolute beast. You had him.
He's got his own chant already. Everybody in the stadium was already like, Abdul, you know.
You said last week he was the best player in the draft. And guess what? You know what? Looking at the table and all that, he very well might have been. Yes.
Yeah, and for me, the only reason why I really wouldn't want to focus on Shador, and I think we're already done with that, is that it's such a negative storyline, right? With that he got punked with that kid from Atlanta. And like
Ulbricht's son.
Yeah, and like it's all so stupid, and everybody is focusing so much on something negative when there's 256 other guys who are about to make their future. But the Patriots draft a guy who literally gets up there, starts crying, and says he will die for Drake May. That's everything a Pats fan wants to hear. That's anything a football fan wants to hear. Right? When Travis Hunter, they trade up to get him, did you see the elation on his face? Like, he can literally smile ear to ear, and he was, and I was so excited for that guy, and I'm so excited to see how he's going to play, and good on them. Did they do that specifically because of who he is as a football player? I don't think so. I think if you're Jacksonville, you're doing what you're doing there, and you're giving up all the draft picks because this is a generational guy. No one else does this. No one's ever done this. And yeah, he's going to put butts in seats in Jacksonville. I'm going to watch Jacksonville games to watch him play now that I might not have watched. I'm going to watch Abdul Carter play. I want to watch these guys play. I'm going to watch Cam Ward too. I'm not as excited with that because I don't like the Titans. And like we said, they had to do what they had to do there. But is Cam Ward the best quarterback from the last few years? No, he's not. So the one thing that confused me there with the quarterbacks was that other quarterback who got taken in front of Sanders.
Mr. Dart?
No, not Dart. The one after Dart.
Oh, in the fifth round, there was
Tyson Lowe or something like that. I forget his name.
This is how terrible I am at.
But there's really no way. The lowlights of that kid are like he can't. You know, so I didn't understand that. I just thought it got a little weird with the way the quarterbacks were selected. But aside from that, fairly by the numbers early, I think, other than that Jacksonville trade. And then, like I said with the Giants, the reason why I am impressed is they did get Abdul Carter and they were able to weasel their way with some trades to, get to that spot to get Jackson Dart. And where they drafted him now, they can play Russell this year. Jameis is there if they need a backup. Jackson can learn everything and maybe play next year. That kind of sets us up pretty well for the staff there that they bought themselves another year. I don't know that happens with the draft, that you buy yourself a year with the draft, but maybe, you know.
I mean,
Um,
it's not. It has happened before where GMs have succeeded, right? Head coaches too, whatever. Like the entire staff has succeeded. So you're right. Like it could happen. I think, Giants moving up. They wanted him. They wanted him.
yeah.
I think they really wanted him. I think they
Yeah,
saw.
I think they
Plus, there's
either
like a
wanted Ward or Dart, and so once Ward wasn't happening, that's when they shifted their
I
focus.
think you're right. I think you're right about that. Plus, like we talked about last week, the entire dichotomy between the Giants front office staff and Ole Miss, right? Not just like Eli and the Giants, but there's like I think it's who was there was a former Joe Judge, I think, is an analyst there at
Yep,
Ole Miss,
yep,
right?
a lot of
There's a
connections.
lot of connections there.
Yeah,
You get the sense they
and
liked him. Jackson
the only thing
probably
that's
is
a
the most
little
pro-ready
scary
quarterback.
if you're a Giants fan, well, Jackson Dart's hair, he's got to fix that, right? And then the comp to Daniel Jones is a little close.
Yeah.
So that's a little, I mean, obviously different player, different thing, but and you got to think if you're a Giants fan, they did so much homework on this draft that they know him and they know they're not making the same mistake and there really isn't any way they could make the same mistake twice or they will get fired. So,
I hope it works out for them because next year's quarterback class is shaping up to be a lot better than this year's quarterback
yeah.
class. So I
Yeah.
really hope, and that's not even counting our boy Lenoris, who may or may not go pro. I hope he doesn't, but
No, I
whatever.
know. All I'm
He
seeing
could because
everywhere
he's
is
got the talent.
Heisman at this point,
I mean, he's a stud. And we'll
We've
get into
said it
that.
and we'll keep
We'll get
saying
into
it. We'll
that.
beat
Yeah,
that drum.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But into these Gamecocks for the draft. So obviously our stud, who we thought was going to get a lot, drafted a lot higher, Nick Eamon safety, ends up going second round, number 35 overall to the Seahawks. Pretty cool landing spot for him. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
got to move across the country. New era in Seattle, right? Post Pete Carroll, who's now in Las Vegas, and a position he can probably carve out and be a leader on that defense. A little bit lower than we thought. I think you and I were saying something between 17 and 24.
Yeah.
I
Commanders at
think
29, we were kind of high up on.
yeah, I think, you know, obviously Carter sets off some defensive players. The wide receivers were going, the running backs were going by then. So, a few different reasons, but good landing spot for him, possibly one of the better ones out of the drafted South Carolina players. We will mention a couple UDFAs too. I think there's some cool landing spots there. But hard to tell exactly because a new coach in Seattle, and so we don't really know the style yet. New look offense for them, probably a new look defense, no longer Legion of Boom, but a guy that, on what looks like a younger team, a team that's kind of rebuilding with Sam Darnold at the helm at quarterback and possibly Nick at the helm, for their defense, is definitely going to have me watching more Seahawks games.
Absolutely. And like I think like the thing about it, I know understand like the Legion of Boom's been gone for, for a little bit, like
Yeah,
almost
yeah, a
close to
little
a
bit.
decade now. But they still got that 12th man, like the fans still have that 12th man mentality there. So I think like having a big hitting safety, a guy who can change the trajectory of a game with like a pick six and Nicky Manwari, I think he's going to fit in nicely in Seattle, and there might be some growing pains initially, but he's probably going to start almost immediately. I could see them giving him like a very considerable amount of playing time right off the bat in the preseason, training camp, things like that.
Hmm.
I also could see the fans in Seattle. There's got all the fans that love defense, right? Like I still think there's probably fan DNA there that loves the Legion of Boom
Yeah.
thought process. He'll fit in nicely. He's got a lot of lot of big shoes to fill, especially with like guys like Chancellor that were there, right? Richard
Yeah.
Sherman. But I think this is a good learning step for him. And listen, there's no like pressure for the Seahawks to like succeed right now, just with all the changeover between Geno being traded.
Yeah, yeah, same thing.
They
Their
do have
their
Sam Darnold,
coach
you're
is
right.
probably good for a couple years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're like ready to move on, and Pete Carroll's still a heck of a coach, and we'll see him in Vegas. But I'm excited for Nick. I think
Yeah,
he fell a little bit lower than we thought, but listen, like you said, running backs and defensive line were just kind of getting really run in the first round, and
yeah.
it's a deep position, just a deep draft in general.
Yeah, yeah, at those positions. Yeah, and then just to check the Seattle's depth chart here, they do have him listed second at strong safety behind Cody Bryant and ahead of Anthony Bell. And then their other free safeties, Julian Love, AJ Finley, and Ty Okada. So he's going to kind of slot in right with those guys. Even listed second means he could start. He's definitely in a lot of packages, or going to be. Obviously, we'll see him going
And of
for
course
the
they're going to list
Seahawks.
him
And
second. Of course they're going to list him second, right? Like you got to earn that
yeah,
spot to start. Like
yeah, and
you
that's
have
just
to list him
ESPN
second. Yeah,
projecting at the same time, right?
right.
The team will obviously let it, into training camp and into preseason, let us know the actual depth chart. But that even ESPN has him sliding in right away as second and strong safety means he's in, and yes, probably
Yeah,
starting. So
absolutely,
pretty good
absolutely.
stuff
I'm
for Nick.
excited for
And
his career.
still first round, so still getting a pretty good contract with that 5th year option, so
Yeah,
that's pretty good for him, yeah. So moving right
second
along.
round, second round, second
Oh,
round.
sorry, second round. Yeah, sorry,
But there
dozen.
is like I do think like there is something I don't know I'm talking out of my ass right now, but I do think there is something where it's like if you're a second round, there is an option maybe on the
Yeah.
third, fourth year
Yeah, it
if
was
I get correct. I
dangerously
think it's something
close
like
too.
that.
Like
Like yeah,
the type of thing where he was picked, he could have actually been gotten at the end of the first round, but Philly and KC did a trade to like realign that, and then they wanted what they wanted, so that didn't happen. But every now and then you're sitting at 33, 34, 35. You could sneak up into the first just because of that contract and what they wanted,
absolutely.
what the team wants to do. So that's cool. You mentioned TJ Sanders already. DT also went in the second round of 6 picks after Eamon Yuri. He's going to the Buffalo Bills. Pretty cool spot for him. I mean, I'm gonna see him because he's up. He's gonna be up against my team now. But yeah, I mean, it was a need for the Bills. And it's a pretty cool spot for him to land as well.
Makes absolute sense, right? When we talked about last week, like the Bills, I don't know if we had brought this up, but the Bills like are one game away from making the Super Bowl, and that's just losing to the Chiefs. And Patrick Mahomes carved them up in the second half. I know they brought in Hairston. They drafted Harrison from Kentucky because I forget who it
Yeah.
was that got injured in the first half in the AFC Championship game. But you get the sense that like, hey, we need to. We're doing great. We're okay everywhere. We need to shore up the entire pass rush, make sure that
Yep.
we get our guys in there. TJ Sanders, like he's got some faults in the run game, not in the pass rush. Like he is an absolute force, almost like a DN, right in the middle of the field, right in the middle of the trenches, right there.
Yeah.
He's gonna put some havoc on some quarterbacks. I think that they want him to come in, maybe not necessarily be a starter, right? First down, second down, certainly third and medium, third and long situations,
Throwing downs. Yeah.
throwing downs. He's going to be the guy to come in. I expect him to kind of be an immediate impact,
Yeah. They have
specifically in
him.
the passing game.
They have him on the left side. They list him as LDT and second behind Daquan Jones. It's a pretty good spot. But I also think depending on what happens for them on the right side, he could end up over there because I
Yeah,
believe Larry Ugunjambo is suspended.
PEDs. Yeah,
Ogunjobi,
the ex
sorry,
Steeler right there. He's
Ogunjobi.
going to be out for about 6 games, I think.
Yeah, so maybe they use him over there, but maybe because he's a rookie, maybe not. Maybe that's Deion Walker. And then obviously Joey Bosa is over there on the far right, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. I mean, yes, he's gonna cause some havoc for my Drake, and yeah, for some other guys in the AFC like Tua. Got to watch out for these guys. Obviously, don't want any more head injuries. So good landing spot for TJ too. Albeit a cold destination as opposed to South Carolina, up in Buffalo in Orchard Park for that Mafia. Um, moving right along.
Mafia's going to love this guy. They're going to love him.
Yeah, yeah, I think they are. Yeah, he's gonna break some tables too. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Um,
yeah, he is.
and then
He'll be jumping
and
off into
then
the bows right there.
so our trio here in the second round, kind of bing, bing, bing. So we had Eamon Yuri at 35, Sanders at 41. Then we got Demetrius Knight Jr., linebacker, second round, number 49 overall, the Bengals. This is kind of one of my favorites because I feel like there's a lot of work to do for Cincy. Now, I know you don't want to hear much about Cincy with your Steelers, but
I'm here for it, brother.
look, I think we're getting into an era where Joe Burrow does not need to throw for 5 touchdowns to win a game. if they can shore up their defense, right? I mean, their defense was just Swiss cheese. You were going to get the ball, you were going to score, and it was just whether or not Joe Burrow would have the ball last or not. Also, I think getting some rookie blood onto this team is great because that team has started so slow every single year, and rookies don't want to start slow,
Right.
right? They want to get in there, they want to play, they want to show the world what they have. I think Demetrius is going to do that, and I think it's a cool landing spot for him just because they need the help, right?
Absolutely. I think this is a good spot for him, and I'm gonna hate like seeing against him 2 times a year minimum. But he is a dog. Like he's got I think the thing that's like probably most attractive. I'm obviously not an NFL GM, and I certainly don't work for the Bengals. But I feel like the thing that's probably most attractive to him is that he's just like a field general at middle linebacker. Like he doesn't need to be the guy, but he understands how to communicate. He understands how to talk, what's going on, what the press is over here. He understands like, hey, they could be running left, right here. Just great at communication, telling everyone behind him, everyone in front of him. The South Carolina defense was amazing this year, and we got studs everywhere. Nicky Manwari, TJ Sanders, right? Kyle Kennard, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. But it kind of started at Demetrius Knight, and that's because of his communication
Mm.
skills. I could see him maybe not putting up the stats that perhaps like make him like a really good rookie, but certainly communication will make everyone around him better. I think this is a great pick by the Bengals.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he's a little bit like older in terms of a rookie, right? He's 24.
Could be a good thing, though.
So,
Could be a good thing.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. I think the communication will be good with some of the other younger players. He's listed a little lower than the other guys we mentioned. He's listed as their third middle linebacker
Yep.
behind Barrett Carter and Jermaine Pratt. So, are we going to see him immediately right away? Maybe not. Maybe for certain packages. Maybe they use him in a different way. Every now and then using rookies on special teams too, to lay some big hits. But yeah, I think he does work into it. And I can't wait to see him play. I mean, I think we will see him play in the first few games. I just don't know if he's on the line like right from the start.
And he's a great middle linebacker who's also a very good pass defender. So you want to stop Lamar Jackson, you have a middle linebacker who's a great pass defender. We've seen that on film the entire week. Sorry, the entire year, specifically against like Peyton Wilson from my Steelers. So
Oh
just
yeah, your Steelers, but they still didn't get a quarterback, so we'll see what they do there. But I do think they had a good draft too. I think they drafted with some need, and they even got some running backs. They got a running back late. But sticking with the task at hand, our next Gamecock here who got drafted, Kyle Kennard, who is being listed with the Chargers, who they selected him in the fourth round, number 125 overall at linebacker. And that isn't historically his position. So this is kind of a switch here. All the other players we've talked about getting drafted and getting drafted into their position, it kind of looks like the Chargers are going to use him as a linebacker. What do you think there, Samuel?
it's interesting, man. The reigning defensive rank was it Bronco Nagurski Defensive Player of the Year. I think that's the name of the
Love
award.
saying that. I love
Interesting
that
that they
award.
they drafted him because the Chargers are kind of set on edge rushers. I think this says a lot for. So I love that it was Harbaugh taking him. My father, if he watches this, he's gonna hate me because he doesn't like Jim Harbaugh. But I think Harbaugh is a heck of a coach. Both of them just heck of coaches. Like just football DNA. I love that they kind of want to move him over to a weak side linebacker right there, wide linebacker. Obviously, it's probably going to be something where they want to do a 4-3 and then come into a 3-4 type of formation every now and then, multiple defensive sets. Belichick did this quite a bit in New England, where he'd kind of split it up between the front seven with its whether it be the defensive linemen versus the linebackers. I can see Harbaugh doing the exact same thing. Come in here, Kyle Kennard. We wanted you to come in just for an edge rusher situation. It's third and long, third and medium, pass rusher. Go get them. Go do what you got to do. Go get the reason why you're the Bronco Nagurski Defensive Player of the Year. Love the fact that they're open to kind of switching him around between D end and
Yeah.
weak side linebacker. And I think it's just because of size. I think that's the only reason why they would move him over there. Kyle Kennard's quick. He's very quick as a defensive end. I'm excited. I'm very intrigued to see what happens there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could just be, excuse me, could just be, ESPN drawing straws here and doing that.
Sure.
I was kind of reading that, maybe the Chargers were taking him because they do need a successor to Khalil Mack on the edge. So either way, he's going to be that. But if he does play some linebacker too, or sort of more in that mold, or is even kind of calling the shots for the defense. That will be interesting, but I think we got to let it play out a little bit,
Yeah.
right? He's got to get into this style, totally different style, playing on the West Coast. But pretty cool landing spot, basically playing for a college coach who's now in the pros, and who loves defense and running the ball. We will get into another Charger who signed UNFA, who fits all that too in just a little bit. But
It's
yeah,
intriguing. It's intriguing they moved him to the weak side linebacker position. That tells me they want to invest in him, right? They're not going to just get rid of him after 1 year. They say, "Hey, we know we're switching your position. We drafted you in the second round. You're a work in progress, but we think it's a solid work in progress. We're willing to invest in you." That's what that tells me about
yeah,
the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. I like that
yeah.
move. They're ready
Yeah,
to invest in
possibly
him
even
in
give him the
time.
keys, like, and put the
Yeah,
dot on his
could
helmet,
absolutely.
eventually.
I
Yeah,
mean, like,
yeah,
why not? Why not?
yeah, yeah. I'm not the biggest Chargers fan, but
Me
I'd love
neither.
to see them come up in that division over some others. I don't, I like
Tired of the
Sean Payton
Chiefs.
less,
Tired of the
and
Chiefs. Tired of the
yeah, and sick of
Broncos
the
and Sean
Chiefs.
Payton. Yep.
And the Raiders are the Raiders. I mean, they're the Raiders.
Raiders gonna
Um,
Raider.
Yeah, Raiders get Raider. Yeah. So so far we're pretty much in agreement with everything we've seen. With all our players getting drafted. Now we're on to one of our favorites, Big Tonka Truck Hemingway, getting drafted by the Raiders. Also
Speaking of
in the
Raiders,
fourth round, number 135, D tackle here. Pretty cool pick by the Raiders. They needed it. They're pretty banged up at that position in general. They got a lot of cues. Even Max Crosby is a little questionable. But how amazing that Tonka may get to play alongside Max Crosby. I mean, that's pretty cool.
that's the biggest draw, man. And like, listen to all these. Like, I know these Gamecock players are probably just waiting for our next episode to come out of Alumni Game and say,
Eh,
"Hey, what's the analysis that Mike and Sam and Buster
yeah,
have on me?"
obviously.
I obviously that's happening. Just learn from Max. The guy's one of the beasts in the NFL. He's
Yep.
overcome a lot of demons. He's become a great human being. Like, just learn from him. Tonka, we said this ahead of time before the draft. The main concern is short arms. You know what though? If you're just a defensive lineman on the Raiders, they just want you to go get the quarterback, right? So you don't have to worry about this kind of stuff where, we got the short arms here. He's big. He's a Tonka trunk. Like that's what he said, Tonka truck. He can just take up a lot of space right there for Max to go and do his thing. He's gonna have some. I don't think he's what second or third on the depth chart. I would
Yeah,
imagine
he
at this
feels like
point.
he's gonna be a sub package guy, at least to start,
Another work in progress, but you know
Yep.
what? In the fourth round, like he's talented, and this is one thing about the draft, man. A lot of talented players everywhere for the
Yeah.
first time in a
Yeah.
while. Is that NIL? I'm not quite sure, but give it to Tonka. He'll be good in black and silver. I hate the Raiders. I've hated them ever since I
Yeah,
was
I mean,
growing
I
up. I was
think for
told to hate the
him,
Raiders, and I hate the Raiders. But learning from Max Crosby, helping him out, that's something else.
yeah, I think for him, he just kind of fit what the Raiders were trying to do in this draft, being versatile and getting guys that are versatile and have
Good
experience.
call.
That was kind of what they tried to do. So for some people, this was a little bit of a reach, but there were a very wide range of opinions on Tonka, right? Some people were like, "Oh, the athleticism." Some people were like you said, like, "Oh, but his reach isn't much." Um, and he played all over the defensive front. So that versatility, I think, is what they need. And then when you
100%, Mike.
look at their depth
Yeah.
chart right now and you look at all the cues everywhere and in terms of like who's questionable and whatnot, I think that's another reason why you take Tonka. Like, because if Max is not 100%, if Christian Wilkins is not 100%, a bunch of other pieces on their line are not 100%, this is a guy that can be versatile and fill in here and there and learn from all these guys and become something for you. Right. I
A
mean,
lot
that's
of
the other thing we're saying, and I think probably why Nick dropped a little bit. All these players, they really have a lot, but they do need to be coached up just a little bit more than they are right now. And so some of these coaches have their work cut out for them. Now, even cooler for Tonka, he gets to go to LA, learn from Max, and have Pete Carroll as his head coach. That was not going to be a thing like a few months ago. So that's a pretty cool way that things have worked out for him as well.
And Pete
Excited
Carroll,
to.
even at USC, right? Like, and then obviously in Seattle, like he's got a resume built up where he really cares about the front seven and specifically the front four. Like, he really wants to make sure those front four do their job to plug up those front five, right? Offensive linemen. So I think that's to your point, like the versatility of Tonka. He's a big guy. He can like just go in there and take up bodies, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that's going to do it for the drafted players, right? So five drafted. We did talk about some other players who might have squeaked into the draft. They did not, but a whole host of Gamecocks got signed up, got gobbled up as UDFA's. Not some of the ones we thought, right? But a lot of them have workouts. I heard something like Kai Kroger has so many workouts he can't go to them all. Great for him. I
Good
did
for you,
see
Kai.
some kickers got drafted. The Pats took the best kicker, I think, out of Miami, but they needed that. That was something where we traded our guy away a couple years ago. But right away, a kind of fun one that I'll get to see as far as UDFA's. O'Donnell Fortune, our little darling there from the Shrine Bowl, who had that pick six cornerback. He gets signed by the New York Giants, which was a quick grab by the Giants. So that'll be fun. I'll get to see him a few times this year. Assuming that at least by midseason he's getting in there at corner, which I think he probably can. What are your thoughts there? You think he might be able to? I mean, look, with the UDFA right away, you don't know, but when you're signed almost immediately when the draft ends, and almost as a
So
eighth round draft pick.
But that's the thing. This is one of the deeper drafts that I think we remember in our time, and I'm not sure what it is. I think it's just like there's just so many dogs that are come like this is a deep draft. So I would not rule out anyone who's a UDFA right now to not get a roster spot.
Right,
Like
right,
they're
right, right.
young, right? And a lot of times too, they're playing less snaps, and Odell like obviously played in the was it the Senior Bowl, I think it was, or Shrine
Yep.
Bowl, and won the MVP. I don't think that this is a situation where it's like, oh, you're just going to be on the practice squad. These guys are good. Every single player that, like, even the ones that weren't in South Carolina, every single player that was a UDFA, and there was a lot that were signed, teams are generally like, yo, what do you have? Because at the end of the day, like, injury is a part of the game. It's a
Mhm.
part of the game, and people get, like, you can obviously argue, like, the team that wins the Super Bowl is just the healthiest at the end of the year. I'm not going to say that because Philadelphia's trenches were amazing, but, like, Odell Fortune, he's got some talent. I don't know if he'll step in and be a starter immediately.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that.
Certainly a nickelback slot option when he starts in the preseason is an option, and go from there, man. You're getting your opportunity. Just go take it, big boy.
Yeah, yeah, and he'll be up against some pretty awesome wide receivers in the NFC East, so we'll see what he can do there.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for us, just to connect some dots here, we were talking a lot about the Chargers. I'm gonna skip to another one of our favorites here. Rocket Sanders, running back, gets signed by the LA Chargers as a UDFA. That's kind of cool because we knew going in that like Najee wasn't going to be their main guy. And then they draft Omarion from UNC, who really looks like a good fit. And now they have Rocket there too. So say they want to take it easy with Omarion, or they got some real punishing
Yep.
downs where they need some stuff, that could be Rocket. And then also, Rocket can catch some passes. So maybe Rocket could be the passing back, or more of a comp directly to Najee, to basically back up Najee directly while Omarion's doing his own thing. So I do think Rocket could get in the mix there. Fun to see that running back room. I mean, just those three names
Yeah.
alone in a room
Yeah.
together, let alone who else is going to be part of that, is pretty cool. And you said it earlier. I mean, we're not the biggest fan of the Harbaughs, but what's he trying to do here? He's trying to run the ball and play defense. That's what's happening with what he got from South Carolina. And kind of fun that those guys will be on the squad together, albeit on different sides of the ball.
Excellent, excellent pass blocker too, coming out from the backfield there. Rocket Sanders is. He's a big body. He can take someone up. And what's the first thing you think about when you think of the Chargers outside of Harbaugh and wanting to run? It's Justin Herbert, man. He guy's a stud. They want to protect him. They want to make sure that they double down on their investment there.
Yep.
I honestly, because of the way that Harbaugh loves to use running backs, not just when he was in Michigan, but certainly was with the San Francisco 49ers head coach. He wants, and Stanford too, right? When he was at Stanford
Yeah.
before that, he wants to run the ball. He's not afraid to have 4 or 5 like the way the Browns have like 5 quarterbacks. Harbaugh's not afraid to have 5 running backs,
Yeah.
maybe
And
even
use them.
six, and
Yeah.
use each and every one of them. And Rocket has a skill set. He might not be getting a lot of carries in the preseason of this year.
But he should get snaps.
You could see him
Yeah.
get snaps because he's a tremendous pass blocker, and I think that's probably why Harbaugh was intrigued. Not just the fact that he's also a volume carry guy and a volume touch guy, certainly a great pass blocker.
Yeah. And who
Good for
knows?
him.
Maybe he
There's
wants to get
honestly
some
not a better
speed on
spot for him.
special teams too. I could see
Yeah.
Rocket helping out a lot on special
There's
teams.
not a better spot. I mean, I would have loved to see him as like a third running back for the Steelers, but it's a great spot for him because if there's anyone that loves running backs, it's Harbaugh. So, Rocket man, kudos, we're cheering for you, brother.
Yeah,
We're
it's
cheering
funny
for you.
because you can analyze the draft a couple different ways, right? You can just go from a pure playing standpoint. You can go from a fantasy standpoint. When you look at the draft from a fantasy standpoint, there's certain areas, like in certain teams, where, oh man, this should have gotten disrupted, right? Now with the Chargers, we kind of knew this was going to happen. You knew from the second they signed Najee that they were not done there, and that running back room has to shake out. So no one's really sure
Grabbing
from
Omari in the
fantasy.
second round
Yeah,
or the
exactly.
first round,
But
excuse me.
like somewhere like Cincinnati with Chase Brown at the top, it's like if Cincinnati drafted anybody, then Chase Brown's in trouble. But they didn't. So like for me, if there was a better place where he could play more, it might have been somewhere like Cincinnati. It might have been somewhere like Dallas, where there's a lot of snaps to gobble up and he could protect Dak. But I still think this is cool. You're on a squad where coach wants to run the ball.
Yeah.
Coach comes from college. Coach needs blockers and guys who can catch and run out of the backfield. That's what Rocket does.
And he
So
loves
all he's got to
big
do is
body
go up
running
there and
backs.
earn it now.
Big body running backs is what he loves, right? Like obviously you got Omari and he's a little bit smaller, but he's not that
Still
much
a bowling
smaller.
ball
But
though, yeah.
yeah, like he's a stud. Like he wants those big guys. Great offensive line with what's his name? Joe Alt Delete, right there over on the right side. Like great fit for him. Another thing that we need to talk about with UDFA's Mike, Bam Martin Scott going to Carolina. Carolina
Yeah, that's
Panthers,
cool.
Panthers love taking those Gamecocks, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They
Dan
really do.
Morgan's like, I got my recruiting pool right down the street, 90 miles down in
They got a good look
Williams-Brice.
at him,
Let me go check out Bam Martin Scott. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, it sells itself, right? Like everybody will want to see him, and they'll sell some jerseys, and that's great. I think in terms of him fitting on the squad, we'll see exactly. He isn't really listed in with things yet for their linebackers. But another guy's on the squad who's gonna pull for him. In case you forgot, Jadeveon Clowney is there. So there are a couple Gamecocks there now on that defense, and what better guy to kind of learn from and see how things go, and then a fellow alumnus.
Yeah,
So that's pretty cool.
the
But
clown
yeah, I
baby.
mean, he's gonna have to earn it. They're pretty deep at linebacker. They do have a couple guys that are banged up, couple of Qs there with Josie Jewell, Trevin Wallace, Claudin Chirillis. All those guys are a little bit questionable. Clowney's definitely in the mix. Roseboom is definitely in the mix. And I mean, but they got some work to do on defense there. So some fresh blood. There's definitely
Yeah.
some opportunity for him. He doesn't have to move real far, and should be given some of the tools to succeed there with Carolina. I had thought Carolina would take more Gamecocks. They didn't. It's kind of shaken out that between the
Well, we have
draftees and the UDFA's, it's mainly Chargers.
you had him pegged
Um,
out last week that perhaps Demetrius Knight was going to be taken by the Panthers, and they didn't. I think it's a good spot because they are going to need to re-up at middle linebacker and
yeah.
linebacker specifically. They took a couple edge players. I think they took the nose tackle from Florida too. I forget his name. And like the fifth or
Uh,
Cam Jackson maybe in the fifth or sixth round, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
they got Cam Jackson behind
Cam,
Shai Tuttle and Bobby Brown. Yeah,
Martin Scott's the only linebacker they took who's a true linebacker position player,
yeah,
or can play that true linebacker position player. So, being specialized the way he is, could be beneficial. He's not gonna play this year. We could see him in 2026.
yeah. Or if they make a move or whatever. And we mentioned some other players there. From South Carolina. J.C. Horn is there too. There's a lot of guys from South
Yeah.
Carolina. So there's kind of a rich history there. So he should
I
be
mean, they've
comfortable.
they've taken like 5 or 6 players in the last like 6 rounds from
Yeah,
South
yeah,
Carolina.
yeah.
Kind of cool. It's like the old days in the 70s when the Steelers were taking nothing but Penn State guys. It's kind of cool. I
We've
had
done
it
a
from the
lot of defense. No, no, it's cool. We've done a lot of defense, so we'll switch over to the offensive side of the ball. A kind of favorite alumni now of yours, Joshua Simon, tight end, signs with the Atlanta Falcons. Kind of a cool spot too, right? Not too far from home. They got some new offensive weapons there. Kyle Pitts has not always been exactly what everybody wants at the tight end position for the Falcons. So maybe some opportunity for Simon there too.
Absolutely right about Kyle Pitts, man. This is a guy that, like, I think he's from Ohio State, right? Everyone kind of really had him up there as like being the guy. Like, he's gonna be a guy who was a top, what was he, like the sixth pick or something like that a few
Right.
years ago. Like, this is the dude. Michael Penix Jr. is in here now. But you get the sense that maybe he's not a great fit with Michael Penix Jr. Hey, let's get some fresh blood in here. Let's get Kyle Pitts a little kind of competitive juices flowing here. I don't expect Joshua Simon to be a factor unless there's a major injury. I don't expect him to be a factor at the beginning of the year. However, he's the type of guy that came on at the end of the year last year, specifically in that Missouri game. Kentucky had a pretty good appearance. I know that was like game 3 or whatever. But he came on at the end of the year when there was injuries to Nick Harbor, some of these other receivers. Joshua Simon is sneaky good. He's got to work on blocking, but I don't get the sense that Atlanta's worried about the blocking position in tight end because
Yeah.
they got Penix and they want to spin it and they're ready to double down on him.
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson obviously is going to be that, so is going to be the runner there. I could see Simon getting in some snaps here at the end, near the end of the year if there's some injuries.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I think they make a move and they do something here. I mean, look, don't get it twisted. We're not saying anything. We're not saying anything like,
He's not
oh,
going to
he's
replace.
replacing Kyle Pitts.
He's
or
not
anything
replacing
like
Kyle
that.
Pitts right now. However,
But I would say
Kyle Pitts'
separate
contract
of
is
Simon.
out. Kyle Pitts' contract is out at the end of the year. Where
That's what I was going to say.
They have an
So
option. Maybe
there's an
Joshua
outside
Simon. Yep.
chance that with his contract coming to an end, if they don't like it and they don't want no more of it because this current coach didn't draft him, they could
Exactly.
trade him during the year because then someone would have the first crack to re-sign him and do something with him. So,
Or they just don't pick up his option and he's gone. He goes to free
Yeah.
agency. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that could happen there.
yeah, and
I
there's
haven't
a lot of snaps there that Kyle Pitts plays, so it almost feels like two guys have to replace him. Now, the names in front of Josh Simon don't blow you away. After Pitts, it goes Charlie Warner, Tegan Quitoriano, Felipe Franks, and Nicola Kalinick. Okay, well, I don't really know any of those guys besides Charlie Warner. And you get the sense one or two of them could flush out. And if Pitts or Warner were traded or dealt, then all of a sudden, yes, Simon is getting actual meaningful snaps. I don't know exactly what the Falcons' outlook looks like. I'm of the mind that Tampa leads that division, that Atlanta and NOLA kind of fight it out after that, and Carolina's a wild card in my mind.
Atlanta before the draft interviewed only defensive players, and then in the draft they selected only defensive players. Now, as soon as the draft was done, one of their very first moves was to get an undrafted free agent, Joshua Simon. That tells me that they were pegged on him as an offensive player from the beginning as someone we could get. And the fact that he wasn't drafted, they're like, yo, let's go scoop this guy up right now because they want nothing but defense. That's a pretty good sign that he could be Kyle Pitts' replacement.
Yeah, and a couple of flyers, right? Simon starts really showing something, and we really got something here, and we can coach it up, then we could make a move, or that might incent us to make a move sooner than we might have, or maybe trade or whatever. So, yeah, we'll see if he can get a little rapport with Penix. Obviously, that'd be great. And a little bit more blocking, like we said, like almost everybody else, getting coached up a little bit more. Not far from home, should have the support network, and not a bad place to go to a young team that wants to throw the ball and sling it. So that's pretty cool. So really nowhere that's a bad landing spot. I mean, I guess out of everyone we talked about so far, O'Donnell Fortune, we'll see. Rocket, if you were to go the other way, you would say, oh, well, Amarian's ahead of him. So, I don't know.
And Najee. No, both those arguments make perfect sense about both those guys. I think everyone else, pretty good fit, right? But you get Odell and Rocket, you're like, okay,
I would
snaps
say
could be limited.
TJ may have a harder time breaking in than maybe we thought. I mean, Buffalo's pretty established and was one game away. Are they going to want to mess with what they had already? Not necessarily, but obviously TJ can contribute. Whether he's a starter by the end of the year, helping them go to the Super Bowl. We'll find out. But in a really, I mean, look, we talked about it from the Combine. Watch that episode. We talked about it on
Click
the
right here.
draft.
It's right up there.
Yep. Watch that episode too, where we preempt the draft, and we're talking about it now. But just overall, a very impressive class defensively. some real
Yeah.
gems UDFA wise, offensively. We think between Rocket, Josh Simon, even Gage Larvadian, wide receiver signing with the Browns. Right, Browns need offense. They got a lot of quarterbacks,
A lot of
so
quarterbacks to throw to him.
Gage is going to get to work with someone like Sanders or who was the Oregon guy,
Dylan Gabriel.
you know, and those guys could be the future. So he'll be on the second team with them. So who knows? Gage could be doing some stuff for the Browns too.
That's true,
Um,
man. You get like a quarterback, one wide receiver tandem that like clicks. That can really make a difference
yeah,
to
right.
like
Guys are on the
offensive
practice squad
coordinators.
doing
Yeah.
stuff, and then they come up together, or you bring them with to make them comfortable. So that could happen too. Just to round out the other UDFAs that we know, in case there's anyone else you guys want to hear about, Alex Huntley, DT, signs with Miami. So he might be terrorizing Drake May and some of my Patriots offensive pieces. And then Torricelli Simpkins, O-line, signed with the Saints, which Lord knows they need O-line.
Good to see.
Who
Good
knows?
to see two offensive linemen on, or excuse me, two offensive players from the other. Was it eight that were now on NFL teams from this last class? So good to see two guys.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
both
we'll
sides of
see.
the ball
We'll see.
represented, but we weren't surprised by all the defensive players. I mean, this is the staple of Shane Beamer.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, look, could change for next year. I mean, with what we're seeing with these wide receivers for South Carolina, obviously with our quarterback, with beefing up the O-line, it could flip the other way next year, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we lost some good players on defense. We got to build that back. We may not have as many defensive players next year in this draft, in the combine or the draft. But overall, if you're Coach Beamer, you got to be loving this. He's very proud of his players. If you are a lot of these players, man, are you glad that you were with Beamer and he got you where you needed to go because you're on an NFL roster,
Absolutely.
and South Carolina setting records in a draft is always something I want to hear. So definitely going to be watching these guys. Anything else you wanna get into, Sam? I know we still got our Steelers and Pats if we want to talk
Let's
about that.
let's do this real quick. Last 2 minutes here, right? Let's do this real quick. Give your Pats a grade on the draft this year and what you think. Let's hear Mike's thoughts about it.
Well, my big thought was a little bit of surprise, right? I didn't necessarily love Vrabel. I don't love the idea that we're on our third coach in 3 years. Like no team should do that, right? I think
Yeah.
my owner is meddling too much and he's got to go and he's got to let his kid do it.
I like
But
that take from you. You've been
as-
consistent with that the last
yeah,
year. I've liked
aside
that.
from that, though, pleasantly surprised. We have now a defensive head coach, and our first four picks were on the offense. I think that shows he sees the team and what is the core of our team. The core of our team right now is Drake May, and you put a guy in front of him, you put a running back behind him,
Yeah.
and you put a wide receiver on the side for him. You gave him four pieces that were not there before that are now on his side driving down the field. I think he's got to be stoked about that. He's a second year player. These are rookies coming up with him, so he can a little bit tell them what to do, but he can come up with them. They can come up with him. I think that's huge, right? We saw that with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase coming in
Yeah.
together, learning together, excelling together. I think you got to do that when you have young players. So I'm ecstatic that they did that. I love some of the other defensive pieces they did. I understand what they did near the end of the draft. Why did he take a long snapper? Why did he take a kicker? All right, it's a piece of need. That's fine. But in my mind, one of the better Patriots drafts I've seen in a long time. I know we can't really judge it for 3 years, but that's saying something because
Yeah.
we used to draft terribly.
No, I know, but you get the like you're a fan and you know you've known football. You've been around football for watching football for a while. You're a fan. So when you can see like the draft and it feels good, you're like, okay, this feels like there's a plan. This feels like we know like we
Oh
have a
yeah,
plan moving forward. And I think that's probably what you're saying, right? Like,
yeah. I
hey,
mean,
we
again,
had a plan. I like
I'm
it.
not here to be like, oh, I'm right, da da da.
Yeah,
But we
yeah.
talked about it and we said what could happen. And I said, look, if Abdul's there, if Hunter is there, yeah, we're going to do that. But the plan is this O lineman from LSU. That's what we did.
Yeah, it was
That's
smart. It
exactly
was a
what we
smart
did.
pick. It was a smart pick.
So
Rams,
we
he's a
let it
stud.
fold out. We let Jacksonville make that move. We talked to people. We offered, but you and I said like this pick is not as valuable because it's right after the premier players. Yeah, if we had lost a couple more games and we were there, Jacksonville would have traded with us, and we'd have a host of picks, and we could do
Right.
that.
Right? Yeah.
Did we want the quarterback in Cam Ward? No, we didn't. So that's why the Giants were doing their thing. Did anybody else want a quarterback after that? No, they didn't. It was Cam Ward, and that was it for a little while. And the Giants were going after Dart, so we had nothing to do with that. So Yeah, no, I think where your station was, what you needed. I was a little surprised that we took a running back, but I would also say I've been a little underwhelmed with our running back play. So nice to have some new blood there.
Running
And
back was deep this draft, though. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
and then I
it's
think that wide receiver we took, I'm just hoping because I think it's a good pick. I think it does what we need, but we took two wide receivers last year, and neither one of them done anything. So I don't want to see that again. I don't want to be making the same mistakes. But they had to get an offensive weapon somewhere. I hope they still do. They did take what's his name from Mac Hollins. I totally forgot that we got Mac Hollins from Buffalo. You know, the guy who doesn't wear shoes and likes walking around bare
yeah,
feet.
yeah.
And I totally forgot about him. And so he probably, after Stephon Diggs getting healthy, he's number one. Maybe Mac Hollins is number two, and then our new draft pick is maybe number three. If Booty goes or we figure something else there, that's not bad. And then we took some tight ends late and stuff too. How about your Steelers, buddy?
I mean, it felt right. You know what I mean? Like it just felt right. There's a couple of years there where we're like reaching for like running backs and quarterbacks and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I get it. We're somewhat in a rebuild. This was like I heard Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Guy's great. If you ever listen to him, if you're a Steelers fan, which judging by our 110 subscribers, I would say you're not. But it,
Hey, you guys want to hear more about your pro teams? Let us know. We'll talk about them.
yeah,
We don't want to leave
that'd be
anybody
great.
out here.
I tell you what, the guy they took in the first round from Oregon, Derek Harmon, absolute beast. Unfortunately, his mother died
I
about
heard
2 hours after
that.
he was drafted. Told her and stuff. Absolute beast. Guy like transferred from Ohio State to Oregon for the NIL money so that he could spend it on her medical bills and get her an
Oh,
accessible van. Like that's just I love. I mean, it's just such a shame what happened with him and his mother. And but yeah, I tell you what,
yeah, I
it's
did hear
great.
about that.
Second
So sorry
round,
about that.
we had DK Metcalf, so potentially the best second round draft pick this year.
Mm-hmm.
But then like getting Caleb Johnson and like this guy was projected to be a late first stretch, definitely second round pick. He drops. Jack Sawyer was whatever, but then you get Will Howard, who's a national champion. Yaya Black from Iowa, right? I think I
Yeah,
pronounced
yeah,
his name
love that.
correctly. Big old dude playing right in the middle. They had a plan. We're going to stop the run. We got destroyed this year on the run, specifically against Philadelphia. A lot of those teams, the Ravens, right, in the playoffs, like all those teams that just were playing bully ball. Enough's enough. Like we're gonna like we're that's our focus right there. Could not be happier with the draft. Don't even care we didn't get a quarterback outside of Will
Yeah,
Howard.
and no,
What
no
it's a
Cox,
low
no
it's a low
Cox eating crow
I
either. None of
yeah,
them are
it's a
Ravens.
low risk it's a low risk pick of the sixth pick to get Will Howard, right? Next year is a lot of great quarterbacks. So I'm fine with not taking Shador. I'm fine with the entire meat and potatoes in the trenches pick. Let's roll a flyer on Will Howard. I am ready to start the season with Mason Rudolph. I mean, definitely this year
Run,
because
run, Rudolph.
they got
Yeah,
bigger. And plus, you got Troy Fautano coming back from injury last year. I mean, this I feel good about it. I really do.
good.
They got down to Steeler football, which was like stop the run, and
Yep.
very happy with Omar Khan. I think this
Yeah,
is
especially with what's in
third
your
straight draft.
division.
He's crushed
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Nice. So I know Buster wouldn't let us hear the end of it, and I know what he would say. It's about time the Packers took a wide receiver in the first round.
Yeah.
The longest active streak in the NFL without taking a receiver in the first round. And somewhere Aaron Rodgers is asking why they didn't do it, and Brett Favre is asking the same thing. Not since Javon Walker in 2002 had Green Bay used a first round pick. They take at number 23 in the first round. They take Matthew Golden out of Texas. Pretty sexy pick.
Huge dude.
Um,
Yeah, like he a beast. He a beast.
yeah. And I mean, he's with what was going on there with the wide receivers, right? Christian Watson tearing his ACL, some of the other receivers not being used in a way and not being a true number one. Could be their true number one right off. I mean, we'll see.
Yep.
I mean, could he start right away? Definitely. He's got, sub 4.3 speed. And in Texas, he's basically just moving straight north and he knows big time football. I believe well, did he transfer out of somewhere?
Yeah, he was at Houston. He went to
Yeah,
Houston
Houston.
first. He
And they play a
destroyed.
pro offense too.
Well, he lit up Texas 2 seasons ago. Maybe it's 3 seasons ago at this point. He lit
That's
them
how they
up,
went with that
and
NIL. My God.
and the Texas coaching staff was like, you know what? let's go get that guy.
Yeah.
Let's
So I know Buster would
he
be
carved
excited
us up.
about
Let's go
that.
get
And
him. So
I
yeah,
know we
he's a
said,
go.
the Packers didn't have a ton in this draft, but they made a splash right there, and they gave Jordan Love what he needed. They even took some more offense. Their second round pick, they took an OT that out of NC State, and then they kind of kept going. In round three, they took Savion Williams, wide receiver TCU. So they got a couple of pieces now where they even kind of doubled up with stuff.
It's
Then they
nice.
started going, edge, DT,
Yeah.
quarterback, OL. So they did get a pieces on the defense
It's nice
too.
to see our teams, right? The Patriots, the Steelers, and the Packers. They each had a cohesive plan about what they wanted to do in the draft, and they stuck to it. Too many times you see like kind of, and I'm not saying our franchises, but other franchises, right?
Browns.
Cleveland,
Yeah.
that just like kind of just like don't really have a plan and just like they take quote unquote best player available. That stuff does not work. I mean, it does not work. It doesn't work. You got to have a plan with everyone you take.
Yeah.
So it's cool to
I
see
mean,
the
in some
Packers.
instances, right? Like up at the top, we
Sure,
said,
but that's in the first like round of
yeah,
picks
yeah.
one
I mean,
through
when
10.
Abdul
That's
Carter
not
is the
like
best player
third, fourth,
available,
fifth
you take
round.
him, right? So,
Exactly. It's not like
yeah.
third, fourth, fifth round where the meats and potatoes are. So it's cool to see all three of our teams really have a plan and execute successfully.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I thought the draft played out in a way that made a lot of sense for certain teams who didn't have picks, stockpiling some picks.
Yeah.
Some teams were pretty quiet. Like I said earlier, from what I read, it was generally consensus was something like Seahawks, Giants, Browns, and Pats. Now, I don't
I
know
don't know.
exactly
I
if
don't
that's
get the
right.
Browns. I don't get the Browns there.
I get it in that there were certain positions of need and contractually and what they have are mired in with the number of picks they gave up and Deshaun's contract that it makes sense. There's a lot of like we said, there's a lot of things that weigh in. I think from a pure X's and O's standpoint, I really like what the Giants did. I mean, the Giants defense is going to be really something because what was really weird about what the Giants did that I haven't seen is the second that they that they got Abdul Carter, they re-upped Thibodeau immediately.
Good
Right?
point.
And that was
Really good point.
and
Yes.
that was really weird because I was at MetLife for the draft, right? And we see Abdul, and then the Giants make this announcement, but it's not at the draft. So I'm sitting there and I didn't know. I had to check my phone to see what was going on. It wasn't like Joe Shane came on and was like, okay, guys, we just did Abdul Carter. Like now we're doing Thibodeau. But that was huge news because the second they draft Abdul Carter, if you're a Giants fan, like, oh shit, Thibodeau's gone.
Yeah.
See you later.
And they
But
re-signed
he's
him.
not.
And a couple of those guys with Sexy Dexy. I mean, that's a vicious
And Brian
front,
Burns, I mean,
vicious
this
front four.
could be like
Vicious front
Philly
four.
got to watch out. Dallas got to watch out. Like Giants may not win more than 6 or 7 games.
They drafted to beat Philadelphia, and I think they did a pretty good job of like in the trenches.
I mean, Sam, you're right, but I think they also drafted to beat Washington.
Oh,
at this
100%.
point,
It's everyone in your division. That's how
Yeah.
they drafted. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone in the division.
But yeah, no, I definitely not to be a bit of a homer because I was there, but it really felt smart. It felt like they really did everything they needed to do. If I'm a Giants owner, which I'm not, I'm much more confident in my GM and my coach now than I was a couple of weeks ago.
Or
Is
especially
there a little
last year
thing in the
after
back of my
Hard
mind
Knocks.
still about Saquon, still about Daniel Jones? Yeah, we still got to play games. But I think they're set up more now for success than I have seen them in previous years, and that's kind of what the draft is all about, is all this new hope. And I think some other teams really have that. I think, Tennessee has some of that with their quarterback. I think Jacksonville has that with a transcendent player on both sides of the ball. And I think a lot of the other, 29, 28 teams got a lot of pieces that they need, and now they're filling in with UDFAs. A lot of guys are finding homes, and that's
Yeah.
great. A
Deep,
lot of
deep
South Carolina
draft.
players too.
Deep draft this year. It was really cool to see at the positions that are like in the middle of the field. Really cool to see this year.
Yeah, totally. So, guys, that's going to wrap up our NFL draft coverage 2025. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe, like our content. Check us out on Instagram for shorter clips. Also on YouTube, some shorter clips. Let us know what you guys want to hear about. If there's something we missed in the draft. We got our part 2 soon of our South Carolina schedule coverage, and we'll come back soon with a Gamecock of the Week. If there is a Gamecock of the Week you want to hear us talk about, please let us know. But for now, that's going to do it for another episode of Alumni
Yay!
Cox.
100 subscribers, baby. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Woo! Thank you. Yeah!